Although many of us are from India, we are not running on Indian Standard Time today. We are very much sticking to Pacific Northwest, time. And so this panel is entitled Global Collaborations, Embracing Opportunities and Overcoming Challenges. It'll showcase the strong connections between Indian and U.S. businesses and the possibilities for future trade. And this is really important, right, to Washington State and actually the entire United States, because India is projected to be the third largest economy in the world in a few years. Moderating this panel is Brian Surratt, who is the president and CEO of Greater Seattle Partners. He is a leader in our region, tirelessly promoting growth and trade. And it is with this organization that we initially conceived the idea for doing this conference and this launch. I am happy to introduce him, who will then introduce our panelists and have a conversation with them. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here at Seattle University, and today finally came. I remember the first set of meetings that we had in the president's office with the team. It's like, what would a day like this, what would a convening like this look like, and really set a tone. And I think from the remarks from earlier speakers, I think this is an opportunity that's been waiting. It's waiting to happen. And when I think about the leaders that we have here on this panel who've been doing the work for a long time in the respective organizations, I think it says that the time is right. If anything, we're a little late, but we're here, and we're capturing an opportunity. So I'd like to just slowly again introduce everyone, and then we'll just dive into a conversation. And I want to make sure that we leave enough time at the end of the conversation for you to ask questions, because that's where we get a lot of the great nuggets. We're hoping that we can warm you up a little bit. So as we're in our conversation, start thinking about some of the questions that you have when we think about what does it mean to be a bridge, an economic bridge. How do we tap into the diaspora that Sunny had talked about, and as leveraging that collective power that the Indian community, the Indian American community has, broadly speaking, and why Seattle is actually in a really special, unique place, and why Seattle University is in a special, unique place to take advantage of that. So with that, I'm going to introduce, to my right is Raj Shah, founder of Shah Safari. The mayor had mentioned Raj and your long tenure here in Seattle as a leader, and 50 plus years in leadership here. And if those of you who are, I won't disclose how old I am, but I remember your international news sweatshirts, and so if you had those, you were one of the coolest kids, on the block. And so, in his 50-year career in Seattle, Raj has built numerous companies, and from fashion to real estate, venture funding, and definitely one of the leading lights in Seattle business and philanthropy. So, Raj, it's a great honor that you're here and joining us for this conversation. Next, we have Samir Kumar. He's the Vice President, International Consumer with Amazon. Samir is a VP, Category Management for Exports and Expansions and Global Store Organizations at Amazon. At Amazon, he is responsible for all of Amazon's exports and expansions and expanding stores and new locales throughout the world. So thank you very much for being here on this panel. Next, we have Adnan Swaminathan. He's the Executive Vice President, Global Industry Leader for Infosys Communications, Media and Technology. Adnan is a EVP and Global Industry Leader for the business group that serves clients in communications, OEM, semiconductors, and cloud and enterprise software, and responsible for global P&L for Infosys. And then lastly, but not least, is Avik Bhattacharya. He's the Director, Global Strategy and Market Development for Boeing Commercial Airlines. He's a Director based out of Seattle and leads the partnerships for strategic opportunities for Boeing, industrial participation strategies, and other collaborations and markets across the world: China, Japan, India, Korea, Southeast Asia. So you've traveled a little bit, and I think you've got a plane that can help you, get to those places. So there you go. There you go. So before I jump into the first question, I think one of the things that is compelling about this conversation is historically Seattle. The mayor mentioned it. We're on the Pacific Rim, and historically we've been a trading community, and we're the most trade-dependent community in the world, in the U.S. But historically, that has been tied to East Asia. And that makes sense. Proximity, the deep cultural ties that go back, several hundred years. But we're in an inflection point where we have seen the Indian community really start to make a mark in the broader Puget Sound community. And frankly, we have not taken advantage of and recognized that community. And I'm curious, I'm gonna start with you, Raj. With your time here in Seattle, I'm curious, what have you seen in that evolution and the visibility of the Indian community here in our region? What has that meant to you on a personal level, on a cultural level, and frankly, what are some of the economic opportunities that have come from that?
Very loaded question. I told you, don't ask me any questions. You've got this three very amazing people here. So it's been a long journey for myself and my family, my company, my brother, who's still my partner in this journey. And it's been very exciting because our business has been very international from day one. And we have seen where what many didn't think was possible, the kind of opportunities that materialized over decades with India, Southeast Asian countries. And to a good extent, I would say, I think a company like Boeing was very instrumental in the very few Indians we would see here. And at that time, it was not unusual if we were out, you see an Indian, and if they meet you, they say, you work for Boeing? And we'd say, no. And then it became, you work for Microsoft? No. He said, I didn't have any of those qualifications. Yeah. At any rate, it's been pretty incredible in how dynamic this region has become. I think it's very hard to put your finger on any one thing. It just came about, and the force has been there. So, and I just want to take quick 10 seconds to thank the mayor for very inspiring little pitch he gave us, and to Mr. Singh. I think that's where it's at for people like us now. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. I think that historical context, I think, is really important because we talk about communities and how communities get a foothold and where communities can grow from that. And we talked about how instrumental Boeing was into the early stages of the community here. And you three gentlemen occupy unique spaces in technology and in innovation. I'm curious, within your organizations, how do you see that historical evolution over time to where we are now? And I would like, Avik, to start with, kind of from a Boeing perspective, kind of, the business side, but also what it meant, to in helping establish that culture and community here.
Thank you, Brian. I'll just start by acknowledging the organizers of this conference. Thank you very much for putting this together. As an alumnus of your crosstown, state-supported big brother, I'm very, very happy to be here. It's a privilege. Thank you. Now, to Brian's question, look, a couple of things. I mean, Boeing, and I'm talking about the aviation industry here, Boeing particularly, though, we are the United States' largest exporter. And we have been in that position for a long number of years, and hopefully we'll continue to be in that position. References were made to the trade between the United States and India. The US exports about $80 billion roughly per annum. Just the Air India and Akasa orders in the last about 24 months amount to list prices of about $35 to $40 billion. And there will be more in the next few months, hopefully. So we have a product that is required by the world. We have seen an upsurge in travel, business travel, leisure travel, etc. But what we have also realized is that to be closer to the end customer, we need to be able to get their perspectives here. So that's why we have benefited from the fantastic ecosystem that exists in this part of the world. There is no other corridor like what we have between Everett and Kent, Everett and going down to Frederickson and Auburn. This 70 to 80 mile corridor has the greatest concentration of engineering talent of aviation anywhere in the world. And this has been the case for the last close to 100 years and will continue to remain so. And we want to continue to nourish this. Third, there is in this part of the country, in this part of the world, definitely a certain welcoming milieu, which is a combination of the liberal ethos that have long existed in this part of the United States, and the ability to combine that with technological excellence, which has been extremely attractive. And I think that has really positioned companies such as ours, but not just ours. I mean, companies such as Amazon and Microsoft and everyone that exists in this milieu, and which has enabled us to draw in talent from this area. I think it's been a combination of these factors which have made us, made us continue to be what we have, and we hopefully will have access to this kind of capabilities, both at the intellectual level, and then again at the people relationship level. So that's what we're looking forward to.
Great, thank you. Adnan, I'm going to pose a similar question to you in your space as an innovator. At Infosys, where what does your organization find value in this conversation with the U.S. and India, and why is it so important from your organizational standpoint?
Thank you, and thanks to Seetal and everybody for organizing this platform. So I have been in Seattle since 2005. My kids were born in California, but they pretty much grew up here. And it also coincides with my tenure at Infosys. I joined Infosys in 1999 when we were about $250 million in revenue. And today we are at $18 billion in revenue. And for those of you who may not know about Infosys, it was started in 1981 by 7 engineers in India with a seed capital of about $250. And today the market value is about $75 billion with about 350,000 employees. The reason I'm stating this is there is only one common theme that has driven Infosys, and we have done everything coming out of that common philosophy. And the philosophy is being engineers. They felt if you can learn anything, you can do anything. So learning is and will continue to be the fundamental trait of how we operate the company, because a lot of things will come and go. Previous days it was ERP, and then mobile technologies, cloud, and now Gen AI, and there'll be future things. But we feel if you have fundamentally strong academic capabilities, learning qualifications, you can continue to reinvent yourself. And taking a leaf out of that, we aligned our company objectives with social objectives. So we wanted to take our learning platform and drive that for higher level of evangelization across board. So we created an Infosys Foundation. So I'm also a trustee of the Infosys Foundation in the USA. So as part of that, we have been able to impact far more lives in terms of how we can bridge the digital divide, which is a huge issue today in the world. So the more digital literacy we can drive, we think there'll be more economic prosperity for all of us. So that's what is driving us at the company level and even at the regional level. So here, for example, with University of Washington, so we have created a course in collaboration that serves the neurodiverse, the deaf and blind, that's today available. Collaborating with the professor, Richard Ladner there. We would like to deliver more initiatives like this in this region because it comes from a common theme that we are doing, so it's not like a separate offshoot. So we're looking forward to seeing how we can collaborate with the platform Seetal and team are creating here to drive more of these across the board.
Great, thank you, thank you. Samir, wearing your hat at Amazon, I'm curious what that collaboration and the kind of framing within Amazon with this engagement with India and kind of the origin story that you may have there.
Yeah, thank you for having me here, and thank you, Seetal, for this conference. Glad to be here. I'll go back to my days when I went to India to launch Amazon in India. I was part of the foundation team that went ahead and started Amazon business in India. And we were starting up our marketplace, and I was with a seller in Mumbai. And the seller used to sell DVD. DVD, as you know, even in 2012, was a very declining business. And India, there's definitely the piracy, and not many people buy DVDs. So the seller, we were sitting with him and telling him about how you can sell online, become digital literate and start selling online. And he made a comment in Hindi, and I'll say that in Hindi and then translate that in English. He said, "Sir, kya kar rahe ho aap? Sardaro ki galiyon mein salon khol rahe ho?" So basically, he was saying that in the neighborhood of Sikhs, you are opening a hair cutting salon. And Sikhs, they don't cut their hair. So because DVD is a dying business. So he told him, why don't you try? Come sell on the Amazon platform and try that. And he actually said, okay, sir, let's try that. So next week, our team of selling team went there. He was actually cataloging his whole store with us using the scanners and putting it digitally online. And 6 months later, he was the biggest DVD seller in India on our online platform. I met him a year later. He hugged me and he said, "Sir, can I do more with India? Can I sell more? What else can I sell?" And he had brought a DVD of a movie. I had just mentioned it to him that I would love to show this movie to my kids. He had brought a copy of the DVD for me. So that's what, we were transforming the life of Indian sellers. And that's what we did. And to this date, I believe, I've been out of the India business for a while, but I'll tell that story to my grandkid, that we are truly transforming the life of Indians. So how can we collaborate? I believe that this digital economy, this digital divide, the more and more we do that, the more we'll. So it's the other side of the story where India can be part of the bigger world, and it's doing a way better than some of the other countries in terms of digital literacy and all the digital adoption of tools. But we are helping out where we can. And I believe one of the things we can say, Avik talked about exports from US to India. Amazon sellers who are based out of India that are selling on our platform globally, they started out very small 10 years back, and they'll be close to $7-8 billion in this coming year. So that's my story around how collaboration is helping us out.
I appreciate that. Hearing all four of you in your own context, working for large organizations, founding companies, I'm curious. As you talked about your history, you talked about connection to people. Regardless how big your idea was, or how big your project was, or how big your company is, it's understanding what that connection to people were. I'm curious if you think back to your own personal story, how you got to Seattle, why Seattle, and when you talk to family or friends or potential partners in India or anywhere else in the world, frankly, what do you tell them about Seattle and why this place could be a place for success? I'm curious. I'm going to start with you, Adnan, with this question. And I would ask everyone to answer this question.
Yeah, sure. You actually don't have to start a conversation on Seattle because the first thing they ask is it raining there? Whenever I'm on a video conference, the first thing is it's raining there. And the thing I tell them is I have never, ever carried an umbrella in Seattle so far. And I play golf every weekend, and I hardly take an umbrella with me. I think, so we spent first 5 years in California, Southern California, before we came to Seattle. That actually made us appreciate Seattle much more. So I think Seattle, the first thing we loved was knowledge was a great equalizer. People didn't care about what car you drove, what dress you wore, which university you went. But if you brought value to the table, it was an instant hit. And this was across the Seattle spectrum. And that was so welcoming to us. And we said, this is where we need our kids to grow, because it'll keep them grounded, and it'll definitely provide the platform that they need for taking it further. And it was no surprise, as we found later, that the emphasis in creating value and also creating value for a broader good was present in every aspect of what we came across in Seattle. I'm not able to trace it back to why and what, but it's such a magical place from that perspective that you have a fantastic balance here of everything that you need to preserve traditional values, yet be open enough to embrace the progressive things you need to move forward. So that's sort of how we kind of acclimatize to the region.
Great, thank you, thank you.
I actually have a funny enough story of when we first got to Seattle. This was in the month of March, so we were still in the later half of fall, and spring was about still to break out. And we were staying at a hotel, a temporary accommodation, for a couple of days. And the receptionist, I think on day 2 or day 3, she kind of, as we were walking out, she apologized, saying, "Oh, it's raining again." And both my wife and I looked at her and said, "Hey, look, this is the weather we want. I mean, we come from parts of India where it's hot and hotter for 9 out of 12 months in a year, except for the monsoon, again, which is very humid. So this was fantastic. I mean, so that was, Seattle. A combination of factors. First, and I've already talked about this in my previous remarks, the social milieu here is a combination of the right level of intellectual curiosity. And that comes from being open to the world, being open to various kinds of education streams, having all these great universities in the city and in this county and this region. And the third factor is just being accepting of things that we see across the world. I think those are the reasons that has made Seattle what it is. And those are the reasons which we think will continue to propel Seattle forward. I do not, having traveled all across this country and across the world, there are very few, if any, places which have this combination, this absolutely right balance of technological capability, intellectual curiosity, a very welcoming social milieu, and a very high standard of living that it affords to everyone. So I think those are the reasons.
Great, thank you, thank you. Raj?
I'll first give you this part, which I think you might find it like absolutely mind-blowing. But when we started out in our business, 1975, in 79, 80, we were traveling all over U.S. We had customers all over U.S. There were places and customers we had who actually questioned us, where is Seattle now? Is it in Canada? Seriously. So we've come a long ways, right? The city, and it's exciting. I was born in Kenya. I was 16 and a half years old when I first came here. And it was in January 71. I think it was January 25th or so. And there was about 8-10 inches of snow here. The most striking and most touching for me to experience was just how lovely the people here were. Very welcoming. And that gave me the foundation, appreciation, and of course, as some of my friends here have mentioned, the natural beauty here, just incredible. So all of these factors became were just very supportive to, ability, our desire to do something special. And also, people here seem to be really open. So in terms of us going out, wanting to connect, take our dream to build a fashion company, Seattle was not by any means a place to be known for fashion. In fact, we would be questioned, and the jury is out still on that. But we would be questioned by even our customers in Los Angeles, New York, in Dallas, Atlanta. Why are you based in Seattle? Why not, in New York? And we would say, you need to come out here. And what is, as we look at our journey, Seattle's journey, Seattle became a fashion powerhouse back in the late 70s, 80s, and early 90s. We had almost every major retailer to the most happening independent retailers who would come here 2 to 3 times a year for what is called pre-line. If you just Google pre-line Seattle, and I had no idea. A couple of days ago, somebody mentioned this to me, that they Googled, and here comes up all this. And it is when people would come, they would experience Seattle, and they would be like, oh my God, what a city this is. So I think we are very blessed for those of us who have made Seattle home or have had the opportunity to be connected here. Because like I said earlier, there are just some incredible, wonderful forces here that allows people to thrive, build, and then, take that to other parts of the world.
Yeah, thank you, Raj. So my journey with U.S. and Seattle started way back in '95, and it was I actually worked in a small company down in Olympia, and so I did my first job there, and then I moved to the East Coast of U.S., New York City. I was working on Wall Street during the whole Y2K, where a lot of consulting work was going in terms of the computing systems are going to crash. So I made a lot of money doing that, but I was missing the evergreen state and the small community. This New York City was, so Amazon was starting up, and that brought me back here. And then the second time I decided to go back to India in 2012 with my family. And I said okay, I'll go back and be there. My kids were the one who brought me back. The story goes like this. I was basically telling my daughter that you are going to an international school in India, we should stay here. And she was insistent on coming back to Seattle. She wanted to do her high school here. And I said, look at the diversity in your school. I said, Dad, did you go to my, that event that we had, potluck event? Did you know how many countries were represented in that potluck event in my Grand Ridge Elementary School? I said, no, I don't remember. 108. 108 countries were represented in that event, and food from various regions. The diversity of Seattle is amazing, and that's what I think keeps me here. And then we talked about the talent pool. I was at the high school. I was volunteering in the robotic program because my daughter was part of that. The concept, and the whole concept they had, there's something called First Robotics, and my daughter was part of that. The whole concept is you're running a whole entire company as a high schooler, and you're building the entire robot, but you're also building a company in that. And the amount of innovation they were making, I have met a lot of people, including space people in Dubai and other places. And I said the kind of innovation these kids were doing at school and being helped by a lot of volunteer mentors from Google, from Boeing, from Microsoft, from Amazon, from software to, and these were girls who were getting into STEM. My daughter is going to a PhD program in computer science now. She was inspired by that. So I think the diversity, the kind of people you work with here, that's what makes Seattle what it is. And we've been here now for 25 years, and we love the weather. So that also keeps us here.
No, it's interesting. Your four stories are very different in the sense that they mark different kind of points in time in Seattle's evolution and the evolution of the business community, the evolution of your organizations. Right now, you cannot notice, especially on the east side, the strong Indian American community that has just exploded, just grown so much. I'm curious, how surprised have you been to witness this massive explosion? And obviously, it's driven by our strong tech sector and opportunities there. Number one, are you surprised? I'm going to look at you, Raj. First being you being an observer, and then for the three of you, what does that signal to the rest of our community that we have this amazing new community that is built off an older community, but a different set of skills, frankly, that they're bringing in, and a cultural element. So I'll start with you. Just how surprised have you been to see that?
Oh no, very, very surprising. And I'm sorry, to bring up that. Yeah, back in the early 70s, we would go to like Northgate Mall, which was one of the first malls in the country built. And it would be incredible if you saw an Indian, on the other side of the mall, and you'd be thrilled. And we could, with little exaggeration, really count the number of Indians that were here at that time. It is surprising, but then I think we saw the turning point, and we could feel it. We could feel that there is going to be, a community that is fast coming up, Indian community in the east side. And it's thrilling, and it's exciting. My only one thing I would say, because it is a very, very large community now, as you pointed out, 70,000 just on the east side. There are many, many, many of them who actually feel their journey is over. They feel like, wow, we made it, we're here. I don't think they realize that by being engaged in as such events to other events is going to keep them actually more richer in so many other ways. So,
Thank you.
I am not surprised. When you have 1 billion plus people and so much of talent in the country. I went to India in 2012 after staying in U.S. for 20 years. I had missed the whole liberalization and how India was coming up. When I went there, when I saw the young people working with me as we were launching Amazon in India, I knew the talent pool is so much more. And now I start to see a lot of people that I worked with, and they are working for Amazon around the globe, not just in Seattle, but I see them in Sydney, I see them in Dubai, I see them in Riyadh. So those are the places that I visit all. But I see a lot more of them in Seattle as well. So I'm not surprised, because there was always this talent, and India is up and coming, and it's opening up. It has opened up quite a bit, and the education sector is doing quite well. There are so many engineers and talent. It's not just the IITs. If you just look at the moon mission recently, a lot of that has been India's innovation. So I think that talent, as it grows, it looks around the world, wherever the opportunity is. And as we look at Amazon, as US in general, it's very merit-based. So if you can do well, if you are hardworking, if you have the talent, if you persist, if you are relentless in what you are trying to accomplish, you can do well. And that's what we see in the Indian community that has been built over the last few years. Am I excited about it? Yeah, because when I moved to Seattle in '99, there was one Indian store in Crossroad Mall. That was the only one that I could find. But now there's so much more, and there's a big community, and we all have to start contributing back to the community, as Raj said.
Yeah, no, I think the other factors I would like to add beyond what's spoken is So, of course, India is producing a lot of science and math talent, and it's more likely than not that some of them will come to Seattle. But the interesting factor is also the migration within United States that we see a lot. Due to the opportunities here, the quality of living, and other aspects, I think we have seen a lot of influx from even California and other states over to Seattle that continues to be there. I think the challenge on that count to the city is how do we ensure that this continues to be an interesting, high-quality platform, and the other aspects of life continue to be better here. And otherwise, we may face what California is facing now. That's really important to reckon with. The angle of the whole Seattle and its growth, not just for the Indian community, but also for anybody who is, hungry enough to grow, I think will continue to be there if we can continue to nurture this well. But the biggest benefactor of this has not only been the students and the people who live here, but also the universities here. If you see the rankings of universities in Seattle now, because of the prosperity generally around and the funding that happens and the innovation that happens, I think it's become a very self-perpetual system, each one contributing to the other. So the programs here, the computer science programs or other programs here are becoming extremely compelling for students. I see many of my colleagues' kids wanting to come here and study in universities here. And I think if we continue to work on that, we can keep this a very vibrant place.
No, I agree with all the speakers here, particularly with Anand. Seattle is really the veritable melting pot, not just of India obviously, but when I look around, you have people from all over the world, people from all across the United States here, and they all love being here. They all love being here. This is one of the very few places that once people come here, they actually put down roots. There are not too many people that once they have come to Seattle, that they move on. Right? So I think there is something to what Seattle brings to the table, which attracts a very high quality of talent from across the United States, but also across the world. One of the things that we have is, when we have customers come from across the world, we try and find cuisine to suit their palate. Mm-hmm. And Seattle is probably the only, or maybe, along with New York, New Jersey, maybe Chicago, this is probably the only city where you have restaurants that cater to every known cuisine. 108 or 109 at last count. I remember, when I first started working for Boeing, when we used to have customers come from India, we used to try and find food from Indian restaurants, and they would be, North Indian, Punjabi kind of food. Now we can actually offer them, 5 kinds of cuisines from India alone, right? So I think, there is something to what Seattle has been able to develop, and in a fairly short span of time, in the last 10 to 15 years. There have been, communities in places like New York and New Jersey and Chicago and in Texas, which have been there for the last 30, 40, 50 years even. But no other region has been able to assimilate these numbers of cultures, not just India, across the world, across the country, in such a short span of time, and has been able to maintain a fairly high level of social stability. I think that Seattle deserves a lot of encomium just for that.
I'm glad you brought up the restaurants, and this is for a question at the end of our conversation. It would be a controversial one. Do you think about your favorite Indian restaurant in this region? We're all going to be taking notes on kind of where to go. So think about that as the final question. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about some big global questions. Geopolitical dynamics with what's happening in India, the impacts here, frankly, some of our political dynamics in recent years that have impacted our relationships with partners across the world. On one hand, it's been phenomenal to see the talent, particularly in recent years, coming from India as a source of talent, skilled labor to feed our innovation ecosystem. But part of my ambition at GSP is I want the new talent that's coming into our community to be welcome, to find that place, and their children find that place and really, really contribute and build onto this community that is dynamic. our politics in the past few years have been a real hindrance, to that, and some would say not as welcoming, our national politics. I'm curious, did you see any negative impacts, when we talk about recruiting talent, recruiting people to come to the U.S. Generally, or what there people say, this is just a moment in time, there's a bigger forces at play, but we'll get over that. I'm just kind of curious what you saw in our national politics in recent years that might have hindered that recruitment of amazing talent from India. And I'll start with you, and then Samir, and then.
I think politics everywhere is chaotic, so I would not single out one country versus another. But beyond that, I believe that the understanding of the quality of opportunity that's present here overcomes any hindrances one may face in acclimatizing themselves in that region and feeling comfortable. But if you have a community like Seattle, it's easy to come in, develop network and friendships, and slowly ease into the community, not be bothered about rhetorics that may happen for political reasons. So I think that way, I would say it's more frictionless as far as Seattle is concerned in particular, to settle in as against other cities in the United States. Because of the community and the strong networks that has already been put in place, thanks to the people who have been here for many years. I think all of them have contributed to it. The other aspect I would say is also how we as immigrant population, acclimatize to the social values here, right? Like, for example, our kids didn't choose to be born here, We came here and they are born here, right? So how can we as an immigrant population embrace the progressive aspect of how the society is evolving and work with it? So there is work on both ends there that needs to be carefully understood. As a parent, we learned a lot as our kids went through high school, and now they are in college, so it feels a little bit easier. They're out of our visibility. But I think the work is on both sides. But as far as the political rhetoric is concerned, it's something that we all have to battle at an individual and society level. But as far as the Seattle region is concerned, I think we are far better off compared to other regions I've seen.
Anyone else want to respond to that?
Yeah, look, I think, in large democracies like the United States, multicultural societies, there will always be debate. There'll always be debate. Sometimes the debate can get heated. But I think as long as, we are all respectful and tolerant of each other's views, I think there's a way around it. I live in downtown Seattle, and I've, lived there in this part of town for the last about 8 or 9 years. And so I've seen the trends from 2015 till recently. I mean, there were a couple of years when, admittedly, Seattle was not at its best. But the important thing is, Seattle is coming out of that very quickly. We all heard the mayor's remarks and his priorities. And I think what makes Seattle and this region stand out as well, in any society, in any culture, there'll be, ups and downs. But as long as we have the ability to turn things around, I think we are fairly well placed.
I want to take on the other side of the geopolitical question. Obviously, thoughtful remarks on our national political rhetoric. The geopolitical tensions that we're seeing, frankly, between the U.S. and China. There's massive spillover effect, and that has tremendous economic reverberations. Obviously, China still remains a large trading partner for Washington State, a large trading partner for the U.S. In many ways, depending on who you listen to, India has a potential to not so much supplant, but emerge as a market that can be on par, at least strategically, for the U.S. And I'm curious, if you were an advisor, not to your company, but if you're an advisor to a company that is looking at India as a market, what would you be saying to that CEO of that company when you think about India, not 5 years from now, but 10 years from now, like in order to kind of set roots in India, like how do we navigate some of the geopolitical issues and the opportunities there? Now, I'll start with you, Samir.
I'll start with the opportunities, right? Young population, that's India. Very enabling digital economy, that's building up there, a growing middle class, and government is spending quite a bit in building the infrastructure. So those all, if you add all of those up, it adds up, and the largest country now in the world in terms of population. So if you add all that up, it's a very large opportunity for any company. But it comes with the challenges that we see is, of course, India is not one India. There are 20 different languages. You move 50 miles from wherever you are, everything changes around you. So you have to, there are a lot of small, medium businesses. It's not a country of very large. So the way India is served, the supply chain is fragmented, a lot of small businesses, what we call the Kirana stores. So enabling small, medium businesses had its own set of challenges. So you just can't take whatever has worked in your Western market and just take it out there. But at the same time, I would say there are things that customers or people around the world look for, which we believe we can build a large business on. For Amazon, it's all about having the large selection, like having the biggest assortment that you can offer to the customer, giving them the best value, and then providing them a convenient way to get that. Those are the three pillars and those are same around the world, so we can build that on that. Same thing applies to sellers. What are they looking for? They're looking for easy way to list their product. They want to have very simple tools to be able to sell. And they want to make sure that sale happens and they make some money out doing that. So that's the key thing. As long as we are enabling that, we can build a large business. So focus on fundamentals of your business. Make sure that you're focusing on things that are going to be very large and very big scale. You have to be patient because India is very diverse and at times complicated. But in spite of all the things, it's one of the largest democracy. And it's a big opportunity.
Yeah.
No, I think great points made. If I have to add anything, I would say that for companies that are trying to establish their presence in India, it's important to understand the market deeply before they make big capital outlays. And also see what's coming in the future, because we are already seeing shift in, for example, manufacturing from China to India. But there are capabilities that India needs to develop before it can be institutionalized there. But companies are trying to definitely de-risk their supply chains, given the geopolitical conflict, the Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and what we are seeing in China, Taiwan, and other regions. So clearly, India will be a benefactor of that. But in some cases, India also has to continue to invest in areas that that we heard about to get there. Now, so the opportunities are plenty, and we'll see more and more of that coming. But understanding that market is very key. It's not like as it was said, taking a product or a service here and fitting it in there. So big opportunities.
Thank you.
I'll just add a little bit here. So every one of us agrees that India is now a huge market. And again, it's very diverse, very challenging, between languages to traditions to everything. But this is the way we have always looked at it. If you can take your niche there, be patient, understand that if you will invest and identify right people, hold their hands, for longest time, the mentality of a lot of corporations, companies in America, or even possibly, I think Europe was, well, we're giving you an opportunity. We expect this to be done. See you in 3 months. And then all of a sudden, it didn't happen because you did not invest to really walk them through all of what it takes to get to what you want with them. So just like taking your niche, spending time there, you will find niches. And for me personally, if any business is easy, it's not gonna last. There is no point in it. Everybody's going to be chasing it or will be in there. There won't be really enough fruits to share. So anyway, that's my point. Thanks.
Are Americans good at this? You know, American companies are good at engaging and understanding the Indian market. And I ask that question not as a kind of flippant, you know, rhetorical question, but in the Seattle context, you know, we talked about where the engagements with Japan and China and Korea have been decades and decades in the making. Strong collaboration with government and alignment with investors. We're very good at that. I'm kind of curious, are we any good in that engagement with India and understanding that market? You know, or we just think we can just plug this template and make it work in India because it works somewhere else? I feel like we're behind in that.
I think if we can take a stab at that, look, I think we are getting better. We are getting good pretty quickly. We've always had a large home market in the United States, right? That a lot of European companies have not had, right? And so that hunger and the desperation in European companies, especially in industries like aviation, has always been probably more intense. But we have gotten very much better, not just India, but you know, look around across Southeast Asia and Africa and East Asia. So I can see that manifesting itself in our successes, number one. Secondly, to your question, Brian, I mean, I you know, jump off on the previous one as well. Some of the best insights that we have received have come from very young people. I mean, from folks that have gone in as USAID and Peace Corps volunteers, right? These are people that have spent a lot of time in tier 3, tier 4 towns. And they have come back and told us, hey, you guys are, you know, focused too much in the big cities. This is where the traffic is going to be coming from. You know, they're building a new airport there. That place will start taking more, you know, air traffic. Are you guys thinking of that? So I think that is beginning to manifest itself in terms of how companies run businesses. And I think, you know, I'm pretty optimistic at this, that American companies have this vast reservoir of capabilities that arise from their home market. But we are getting out of that complacency of just being localized here. So I think, you know, it's a journey, but we are definitely getting better vis-a-vis where we were, you know, 10 years back.
I'll just add to that it's not the question of are we doing, we have to, at least as a company, as Amazon, if we are going to call ourselves a global company, we need to get better at it, right? So I think we have a leadership principle that we call learn and be curious. And I think we have to learn our way. So we have to be humble. There's a lot more to learn. And there are a lot of those challenges, as you said, logistics challenge, payments challenge, trust challenge. Like customers don't trust to buy online. So like as we go into these newer emerging countries around the world, guess what? We have covered the easy part, which is the US and the Europe and the Japans of the world, which works in similar ways. We have to adapt and learn because a lot of innovations in this century or the coming years will come from these places. So if you want to, basically we believe that as a company, as we grow, we are going to get complacent. We are going to get like we are becoming too large in US or we have a certain size in US, but we have so much to do around the world. So if we have to, as American companies, if we want to do well in the world, we have to learn our ways into working with these large economies in the world and upcoming economies and learn about how they do things. And they will teach us a lot. And by the way, those teachings and those learnings can be applied globally as well. A lot of learnings that we have taken from India, how we work with sellers, how we deal with our customers, have been taken global for Amazon as well. So I am very optimistic about and it's about the leadership and how we go and implement that, but we have to get there. That's my thing.
I think two things. One is participating in India's economic growth is critical for any company to be successful there. If they're only trying to sell products and services in Indian market, I think they will find it a challenge because they will have to, India is becoming more and more ambitious at all levels. And second is, it also needs intervention from a public standpoint that the business, the country to country policies and tariffs and management of confidentiality and IP and other practices have to become more homogeneous for the American companies to be successful in the Indian context. So I think there is a lot more work happening on all these counts now. And no company can escape the question because at the board level, we find with all clients, one question that's getting asked with the CEO is, what's your India strategy? right? So they will have to think about it more proactively. But it has to happen at all these different levels.
Yeah. Want to add anything, Raj? I'm going to ask one more question, then I'm going to open up for questions from the audience. So start thinking about your questions. I want to ask the reverse. If you were advising an Indian company looking to come into the market, the U.S. market, what would you advise them? You can pick whatever industry that you have in mind. I raise that. Part of our work at Greater Seattle Partners is to try to bring international investment and attract talent from everywhere. And we've been fortunate recently to have some new announcements recently from some Indian companies coming into our region. We're very proud of. We want more of it. But I'm kind of curious, if you were an advisor to an Indian company looking to expand into our market, what would you tell them?
Yeah. So if I have to, I'll go back to the starting principle of Amazon, which is around when we look at any new idea or any new initiative, we ask ourselves 3 or 4 things, right? And those 3 things are, is your product something customers will care for, right? Like, is it differentiated? Is it something that will care for? Is it something that will scale and be somewhat relevant? The third question we ask, when scale, can you make money doing it? And then finally, are you organized well to do that? And that applies to anybody that I'm advising, that if you're building something, look at your customer, who are you targeting, and make sure you're building something that differentiated enough for that customer, whether it's in the US or in another country that you're going in. If you have something that differentiated, that offers values to the customer, you can build a very large business around that. So that would be my advice to anybody.
That's great. That's great.
First thing is, every company, regardless of which country they're trying to enter, should have a very strong economic proposition, right, around innovation, around efficiency, and that's table stakes. If you can keep that, I think you have the first part of the equation solved. But the second aspect is, how do you reflect the values of the country that you want to succeed in, right? So for Indian companies, for example, diversity in the workforce and in the way and understanding of the social practices in the United States and being able to clearly drive that with a lot of authenticity is very critical for long-term success. And that's, I think, the second crucial factor. And the third is to participate in ensuring that India and the US economic and political environment, to the extent they can contribute, continues to be as smooth as possible. Because I think India and the United States are finding themselves at a new level of relationship now compared to what has been in the past for many reasons. And I think each company should contribute towards the progress of that, for their own economic prosperity.
Those are great points. Great points. Avik?
So, I come across this question quite frequently in my interactions, and there are 3 things I advise once the economic proposition is established. The first one is, I tell them that, look, focus on quality. Quality is paramount, and the service that you provide in providing a product is critical. Get that right. Number 2, how will you make sure that the people that are working for you have a career? It doesn't matter if you're a small company, mid-sized company, you're just setting up operations. Make sure that your employees buy into your story and are with you for the long term. Right? The third thing is, make sure you are compliant fully with local norms. And when I say local norms, it's not just federal norms. It's state norms, county norms. Make sure you're compliant with those. And if that requires you to have overheads, et cetera, make sure you have the right advice. Spend upfront so that you get the right advice, so that you do not run into these challenges. And these challenges can be pretty insurmountable, even though you might have a great product. So those are 3 things I always talk about.
That's great. That's great.
The one thing I would say is, yes, a successful Indian company is most likely going to see how can they take their product or service to one of the largest economies in the world, to US. And I think key is for them to understand that, to really make sure that will that product or service work the way it has been working in India, or how much tweaking do they need to do? In addition to that, there are a lot of just regular, everyday business ways that they would have to think about, where in India, somebody comes to see you, you could make them wait 10 minutes, and maybe it's not a big deal sometimes, but that could not go well on this end. Maybe not the best example, but it's just all of these nuances you have to understand. It's not just bringing that product here. The way you may have marketed that product in India, serviced it, might have to be very different, even if that product has a market here. So I think these are some of the things that they would benefit really knowing.
I know those are really, really great insights. We're going to ask the audience to ask our amazing panelists some questions. Before we do that, I, as a moderator, there are two questions, I don't want you to think about. And then we talked about your favorite restaurant, and then a bigger question around, what, big trend you are looking at that impacts your business, this relationship between the U.S. and India. What is that one big thing that you're keeping an eye on down the road? So let that marinate for a minute while we throw it up to the audience for some questions. So do we have mics around? So folks, if you have any questions, remember questions end with the question mark. No speeches, well, a little bit. We're on a college campus, so speeches are okay. But any questions from the audience? There's one there.
I'm Anthony DeCosta. I teach a course on international business, and I think one of the things that students really like is the relationship between culture and international business. Now, studying culture, of course, is not so easy. So what do you do? So, well, one of the things I suggest, go travel and at least check out some other culture that you can learn from. And I think in this context, I've talked to many Indian businesses in Japan. I've studied them also. And one of the things, of course, is that Americans like to get things done quickly. The Japanese don't do it that way. Indians are somewhere in between. Japanese are looking for perfectionism. Indians can't offer it. Americans say, well, we could do with that much. So I think this nuance, as you point out, I think is really something that you cannot grasp right away. You have to spend time. And as a question then, of course, I wondered, what do businesses, let's say Indian businesses located in Seattle, what is it that they do to train their employees from this aspect?
That's a great question. Who wants to take that on?
Yeah, sure. No, the question of expediency versus fidelity is always a great question. It depends on whether I work for Boeing or Amazon. So, there are businesses that you want to fail fast and break and learn from it. There are businesses you just can't fail, right? I think that distinction is really important between expediency and fidelity. And I don't mean they both make great products. I love their products. We are great partners with both of them. I think this is a continuous education that happens, regardless of where somebody comes from in our training and culture. But there is nothing like a particular subject or a curriculum that we use to teach this. This is, I would say, more empirical for an individual and how they are able to impart this in their engagement with their junior members as they come by. But you bring up a great point. There are deals that you win or lose purely based on how you index the deal and who the client is and what the project is. If you are working with a startup who don't care about what's the product that's getting out, frivolously speaking, and they're willing to risk, that's a different story. But if you're working with a hospitality chain like Ritz-Carlton and they have to open a new thing and you're putting the systems in, a customer experience is paramount. They're even willing to wait a year if something is not working out well, right? So great question, but it really depends on the context and on the job training is how we use it.
This one here, and then we'll go over here.
Hi, My name is SETU Doma, and I'm a second-year law student at the law school here. In our law school education and throughout Seattle University, there's a huge focus on our education is anchored in the Jesuit teaching of service and equity and inclusion. So from the panel, we heard a lot about the global collaborations and international business lessons. In your opinion and in your experiences, what are opportunities that students can learn within, like in terms of gender equity and social inclusion, and so what are opportunities that we can benefit from with this global collaboration, and what are lessons from India, the challenges there and the challenges we have here in Washington State? What do these opportunities look like?
That's a great question. And when I think about, another way of kind of paraphrasing that in my mind is when we think about this massive growth that we've seen, this massive level of collaboration, where do we maintain our values, right? And how important is diversity and inclusion and making sure that these opportunities are available. And I'll acknowledge, from a gender standpoint, we're all very good-looking men up here, but we're just men up here, right? And so I'm curious, where does equity play when we think about business opportunity?
I think I'll start, and then maybe you can add Avik, right? So thank you for the question. Great question, right? So as I talked about earlier, like when my daughter talked about the diversity is not just about gender, but I think Seattle is very diverse in itself, so I think that helps out. But you are right, like especially gender diversity is so important, and especially for a technology company like ours, where we know that women participation in technology has been lower compared to other industries. I don't know about the lawyers, but I definitely know in the tech sector we are way below. And what we are starting to realize, why aren't we not getting more women in our interview loops? And I think it boiled down to there's not enough women that are coming in the classroom. We need more role models in the classroom, in high schools or even before that. And that's where I think our effort is going into that, making sure STEM and those programs are going there, along with promoting that. And why is it important? Because if you look at our customers around the world, it's very diverse. Women make up more than half of Amazon customers, even in the US, right? So it's 50-50. So we have to build a diverse culture within our teams, and it's really, really important. And it's not going to happen overnight. We are taking baby steps, but we are definitely marching in the right direction based on what I see at the company. So,
yeah, I'll just add to that. Look, I studied in a Jesuit institution, and in fact, I'm an alumnus of back in India of St. Joseph's Bangalore, which is a sister institution to Seattle University. So I think there is this common ethics bedrock which is shared across universities and institutions of repute. Now coming to diversity, look, diversity is paramount, not just because of the kind of equity it engenders within the organizations, but also very practical business considerations. I'll give an example. Look, when we were designing the 787 Dreamliner, the majority of people working on that were male engineers across the world. And one of the inputs we received from passengers, from flight attendants, from a lot of cross-section of people from across the world was, guys, you are just designing for men. And we just turned around and asked, why? What are you talking about? And people told us that, look, the baggage bins that are so high, it's very difficult for half the population to be able to access it. And that was the trigger point for us to redesign that, which is why it comes down a lot lower and we are able to push it up. So it's things like that. I mean, the control column on an aircraft, right? If you look at the older generation of airplanes, I mean, there is a bigger portion of strength that is required, okay? Coming from a male perspective, yes, I mean, yeah, you just pull the yoke, the aircraft, goes into a certain flight mode. But then we were informed, and we also realized this over time, that as you have a much more diverse workforce coming into the aircraft and are flying the airplanes, etc., you want to be able to make sure that they are as comfortable as male pilots. And therefore, the control responses were changed. So, women pilots today are able to have exactly the same kind of responses that they seek as male pilots, right? A machine does not recognize gender, but we have to make sure that these disparities are fully taken care of, and there is no disparity, right? And I think the most important thing is a lot of these things are inbuilt, self-created insecurities. And I'm looking beyond just gender, I'm looking at LGBTQ. These are just things that we constrain ourselves with. We think, hey, look, would this country, would this culture accept this? And I'm, talking about the world in general, everywhere from the Middle East to Africa to India to Southeast Asia. And very frankly, our experience has been people are very welcoming and open. So it's a journey. We have ways to go, but it has been something that we've benefited from, we have learned a lot from, and it has improved the workplace environment.
That's great answer. So we had that gentleman, I saw that hand, I saw a hand here. We'll start with, and then we'll come back. We'll start with two, and then we're getting warmed up. This is good.
Hello, my name is Dr. Arun Chaveri. I was the first India-born mayor of the city of Burien, which was the newly incorporated city. So I'm quite proud about that service. But my question is about generational conflict, whether it's in business or public service or whatever areas that we are talking about. How do you manage to make sure that there is consensus in people who are coming up with lots of brilliant ideas, and then we have mature and wisdom people like me, gray hair, I said it's a sign of wisdom, maturity, and too much chloride and fluoride in water. But seriously, my question is, how do you manage to make sure that in your own business development or business circle, before you interact with international companies or outside the world, how to make sure that there is a more continuity and consensus before you go out?
So I'll just, wonderful to see you. From my personal approach to this has been that I have always told all of our staff and team leaders that whatever they're doing it because I cannot do that. I cannot do it as well as them. And my wish and my vision has always been that if you have those 6 people under you or 15 people under you, make it your mission that they will do it someday better than you, and that makes you a guru.
Very good. I saw a question here, and then we'll go to that gentleman there.
Thank you. My name is Jesse Tam. I am a candidate for Port of Seattle Commissioner. And I'm not speaking as a candidate for campaigning, but I do believe trade is a very important factor. And I do also feel Washington State is in the beginning of doing a lot of business with India going forward. The world has been changing constantly. In the last 30 years, I attended a lot of conferences, trade mission, trade shows, particularly in China, and I also witnessed the trade improvement between U.S. and China for the last 30 years. My question is, do you see the opportunity going forward to have a way to concentrate on trade relationship development between Washington State and India, particularly? Do you see there is a lot of trade mission, trade show going to be throughout the whole entire India, many different parts, which American companies can attend to, and vice versa to see Indian companies to attend trade show in Las Vegas or California or Washington State that we can further develop the trade relationship? Where might be a good start for that?
Wants to tackle that?
I think the newer industries are going to be a big one for collaboration, right? So I can think of, like, if you look at one thing that we get excited about, and you heard a lot of people talk about generative AI, the new revolution that's going to come. And I think as Amazon, we see our AWS and the customers that we have there, they are all adopting, moving towards that. So but I can see healthcare, education, all those sectors, there's a very large opportunity between the two countries to collaborate and have. So I do see that happening. So those are the few sectors that I can think of. I'll let others add as well.
Yeah, all those, the tech sectors, obviously, but one area which I see and which I think I've already seen trends is agriculture. Washington, apples, cherries, I think India is among the second or the third largest markets. And as the country grows more prosperous, that is one sector which I think has great prospects for growth of exports from Washington state, specifically to India. I think that is important. I mean, all of us in Seattle seem to focus on this 80-mile corridor from the sea, but I think just looking at what's beyond the mountains, I think that is critical. And then in addition to everything tech and healthcare and universities and all of that, but I think agriculture is going to be, could well be the diamond in the mine here.
No, that's a really great point. I think there is a future for much more direct engagement between Seattle, Washington State, and India. Our great partners at the Seattle Chamber, I'm looking at my colleague Gabriela Bueno. We do an annual big leadership mission with our region and led by the Chamber. And India is definitely on the map now. And we need to take a delegation of leaders from our region to India. And that is such an opportunity for us. And frankly, it's a stretch for our region. We've for a large part, we've done a lot of the quote unquote easy things. This is a challenge, and I think a great one. So look for that in the future. That gentleman had a question there, and then back there.
Great, things. Thank you so much for your all words full of wisdom. So my name is Ahmad Alalabit, and I'm a political science student and also a commissioner for Refugee and Immigrant Commission of Seattle and founder and president of the House of Wisdom. So I have two questions. First, I'm going to ask a question on behalf of the students and volunteers that are working with me. So the House of Wisdom, our mission is to bridge the gap of inequality in education, especially for marginalized, disadvantaged immigrants and refugees. So I see there's great opportunities such as in Microsoft, such as Discovery Program for like high school student, college student, and university student. But still this field is very competitive. So students that are coming like me, that I have personally immigrated 5 years ago from Afghanistan, it's much difficult to compete with a student who raised here and who born here, who go to the school. So is there more opportunities for the students that are coming? Because some students and volunteers that is working, they have this issue that it's so difficult to find internship in these companies, especially like Microsoft or Boeing or Google. So this is my first question. And my second question is, I'm personally, I immigrated from Afghanistan 5 years ago, and I really share a deep love for India and people of India. So the relationship that was here like 20 years ago with United States, how would you compare this to now? Like what things have changed, and what do you see like 20 years specifically coming, like what we could do more to make this cooperation and partnership more stronger? Because as you mentioned, this is one of the biggest countries in terms of population and coming a new strong workforce. Yeah, I hope you guys understand my question. Thank you so much.
Great question. This young man is interviewing for an internship with one of you. So there you go. So.
I think first of all, you're welcome to apply. It's great to hear the enthusiasm in your voice and your concern for the community. I think clearly there is interest to ensure that the people who don't have access, we are able to create access. So our biggest endeavor on that is through our learning platform called which is the one that I spoke about. I can, through the Infosys Foundation, I can make introductions on that. As far as the India-US relationship is concerned, I think it's driven by the context of where the world is now. I think two of the biggest democracies are coming together for really many good common reasons. I see it very strong based on what I have seen over the years. It has continued to progress so well to a point that I think there is a lot of respect for what each of the countries can do. But however, both countries would want to maintain very fiercely their independence, whether it's economic policies, social policies, or other things. And as far as both the countries are able to respect it, I think this will grow. But the moment I think each one is going to step on that, I think it's going to that extent, slow down. But I think we are finding more common ground in terms of promoting this rather than actually the more sticky, difficult issues.
And on internship, I'll just add that Amazon has always been welcoming interns, and we have a very large set of interns that come in. We used to, in early days, we used to go to few schools to hire interns, but that process has been very much simplified now. It's a blind process. Anyone can apply. If you want a list of internship, you can just go click the button. And it's kind of a process which works on its own. Like, there's no human judgment involved in the initial side of it. So we are, like, the way we build our process in a way that we have very set of objective criteria, and we welcome interns from all over the world. And I believe they are the future Amazonian and future citizens. So welcome, apply, and we'll see how the process goes.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So you've done the right thing. Come to these kinds of events. Well done.
So my question was not about myself, but about the volunteers and people who are looking for these opportunities. But thank you.
I think we have time for one more question. The gentle lady in the back. So, no, right behind you. Right behind, yeah, sorry. So one more question, and then we're going to wrap up this panel.
And good luck with the Asia Cup, by the way.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Krishna, ex-Boeing India employee and currently a student at Seattle U pursuing MBA. So taking off on the gentleman's question on culture, so the way we develop a two-way relationship between two countries, especially in terms of business, is a two-way exchange of people. Now, when I was working at Boeing, we saw that there were folks interested to come from Bangalore to Seattle or Delhi to Seattle, but not necessarily the other way around. So Americans would like to come to India to visit, maybe on a business trip for a month or so, but how do you see that changing, right? What are companies doing to make sure it's more a two-way street between businesses?
I can answer to that. So first, if you go to any Infosys campus, I'm sorry, nothing can compete. No Seattle, no San Francisco. If you go to a Bangalore campus, Mysore campus, it's way better than what you might see here. I mean it seriously. You can look up on the website, or if you have a chance, you should visit us in India. I think it's very important to develop an infrastructure that actually invites people from other countries and makes them feel safe and comfortable. In the last 3 years, we hired about 10,000 students in the United States. And I would say maybe 40–50% of them have been to India, and some of them are working in India right now. They have stayed in our campus for 3 months, 6 months, going through our training program. And we have seen nothing but a phenomenal positive enthusiasm for them to do more and more of these. I think from our perspective, we need to open up this to more people to understand what we offer and the value that they get when they go and participate in the learning with a community there than doing with a smaller group of people here. So the India, and I am only speaking for Infosys, but I'm sure other companies have also stepped up in terms of their training, infrastructure investments, and other things. So I see this migration happening the other way. Will be more and more, in my view. It will definitely increase because of the opportunities today that you find in a Bangalore startup environment as compared to what you find here. I'm sure it's going to be very competitive.
I think I'll add to what the American point of view. We are Seattle-based company. We grew up in Seattle, Amazon as a company. So when you look at all the leadership sits in Seattle, A lot of opportunities overall, if you look for Amazon, they are based out of Seattle or US. So we are trying to diversify that as well. Like, look, we have built a center in Washington, DC, and that's with our second HQ. Along with that, we have centers. Like in India, we have over 100,000 people working for us now. So we have centers in Hyderabad, Bangalore, Chennai. All of those are really big centers for us. I think what attracts people is, I think your company culture is also very important, right? If you manage your culture in a way that you enable people to go try out new countries, do things in different locations, while maintaining your overall culture is really important. When I was working in India, the best compliment I used to get people visiting was, this looks like no different from what we do at Amazon in Seattle. And that's the piece, that building your culture the right way is very important. And as for enabling that, we have a global talent program where we encourage people, if they want to take a 3-month, 6-month assignment, your current team that you're working for, that pays for it, your salary while you're working in that program. All we take the team that's hosting you in the other locale, they all have to pay for your boarding and your experience while you are there. So we are enabling that too, and a lot of people are taking that interest. I think as a company, as you grow, become more global, it will be important for us to build those kind of things. But you also have to admit the fact that when your headquarters is somewhere, you attract a lot more talent there.
So with the few minutes left, I wanted to offer up final thoughts from our great panelists, and the two questions that I wanted you to kind of think about, like just big picture. What is the one thing that you're paying attention to, you're concerned about, or you're excited about that we all should be thinking about? We'd love to hear that. And just any parting thoughts, and final messages you want to leave with this room and this amazing opportunity here. And lastly, I need to know what your favorite restaurants are. So so we'll start here.
Okay. This is very silly, but my favorite restaurant is on First Avenue, Seattle, and I cannot remember the name because I've only been there twice. It's recently opened, and
Mint.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Mint.
yes, Mint. Yes.
Progressive. Mint
Yes.
Progressive.
Yes.
Thank you. Anyway, if you get a chance, it's really, really cool. Very different, and amazing menu. The bar is incredible. So. One of the things I'd like to share with you all is, as we look at India, U.S., and I believe this goes to many other developing, upcoming countries also, and there is so much, and almost everybody on this panel shared this, that we can learn working in those countries, in those places, and bring back some really very valuable ideas. Today, having been in the textile industry for 50 years, we kind of felt we've lived our dream. We have had so much success at so many different levels. We have been known as a company that has created a lot of very successful brands, different genres. There was a time when they said, how come you're in Seattle? Because the whole urban fashion scene is out of New York. It's where the hip hop, rap music, everything comes from, and your brand is right now leading that segment, Mecca, USA. How can that be possible? Well, everything and anything is possible. It doesn't matter where you are. But one of the things we recognized was the studies coming out showing that apparel industry is now being regarded as second, third, fourth most polluting industry on the planet. That did not sit well with me. So I challenged our team in India and our team in Seattle that let us identify why and what can we bring that can be a pivotal change. And in having done that through R&D, using enormous knowledge of our India team and our team in Seattle, we believe we have created what is considered the most sustainable textile in the world now. taking natural fabrics, turning them into supernatural. So our advantage is we first start with natural. Now we turn them into supernatural. So if you go look up Filium, FILIUM.com, you will see what we are doing. But to me, this just shows everything does not need to be innovated from here. It can be from different parts of the world, collaborating from your offices, etc. We just launched an amazing, using the same technology, a golf brand that you might love, you know. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you guys.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you very much.
Well, I thought about restaurants, Indian restaurants, but I'll just admit that the best Indian food that I have is at home. So,
good answer.
Can beat that.
Love it.
Nothing can beat that. In fact, my kids, they would like, when I asked them, like, hey, where do you want to go? I want to try Indian food. They said, why, Dad? Let's go to the Thai place, because Indian food, Mom, you can't beat Mom's food.
There you go.
So for me, it's always been home. So, and I really, my wife is a great cook. So that's, so other than that, I think Cedars on Brooklyn was one of our favorite when we were young, 20 years back. But I haven't ventured into a lot of Indian restaurant scene. In terms of technology or things that excites me for the future, I think you'll hear this. There's a lot of hype around Gen AI and large language models. And based on my own time that I have spent in the last few months learning about it, I truly believe that it's transformative. Like, it's like you had internet in 90s, you had mobile transformation that you saw, and I think that what has happened in the last few years, starting with the whole transformer model that Google introduced, and what has been happening in the Gen AI world with large language models. I'll just use an example of education, for example, and we are here. Like, with these models, you can actually cater to each individual. Like, you have a student who is not learning well in the class. Some of these things you can adapt, and I've seen some of those models. You can create an assistant or a co-pilot for each individual. As a person myself, as they get more cognitive and sentient, right, these assistant or co-pilots, they can help me with my emotional outburst and make me a better person. I think we can make a world a better place. At the same time, I also worry about the impact of this if used in the wrong way. So that's why this kind of an Oppenheimer moment, but it's really good to see what has happened just in the last year or so since ChatGPT came out. But there's a lot more happening in this world, and I'm really excited about the next few years on how this thing is going to shape up. So I remain very positive and excited about this opportunity.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no, for us, I think clearly the benefits of technology are going to accrue at a disproportionate rate. So we are all going to benefit out of this. But I think also the divide between the digitally literate and the digitally non-literate people is increasing. And that is not going to be good. You know, and the government is not keeping up with the policies and everything that's required. And similarly, the retraining and capabilities of people who are getting displaced because of the newer technology is something of a bigger concern. So we need to operate on both counts. How do we leverage the technology, because nobody is going to be able to stop it easily, or it's not good to stop it, but how do we really address the societal implications that's happening, whether it's mental health, whether it's unemployment, or the have-not issues that's developing, and how do we address it? Those two are big concerns for us.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll start with what about your restaurant.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'll take a leaf out of what you said. South Indian food, our home is the best. But Teapot is our favorite. It's a restaurant in Bellevue.
Okay.
It's a vegan restaurant, Thai cuisine. It's really good.
All right, very good, very good.
So I'll start with the easy question first, which is about technological change, and then I'll go to the restaurants. Hey, listen, I'm not focused on a specific technology. There are three vectors we are looking at in the transportation industry in general, aviation, obviously, but also automobile and all of that. So the three vectors are sustainability, safety, and scalability, right? And that is important also because we want to make sure a lot of that capability stays here. It is nourished by the talent and capability we have here, and we we have a positive loop so that we are able to build on the capabilities that we already have in this 70-mile corridor between Everett and Frederickson. Sustainable, why? Right now the world has about roughly, 22,000 aircrafts. In 20 years, that number will go to about 55,000, wow. Right? So metals that go into aircrafts, carbon fiber, the fuel, etc. So therefore, the focus on sustainability. Safety, obviously, we have learned a lot from the accidents of the MAX and the capabilities that we need to bring into the newer generation of products so that they are safe. Why? Also because you have more planes flying to all parts of the world, younger pilots all across the world. It used to be that a veteran pilot used to be 45 years old, right? After having served in the Air Force for 15 years, and then having been a first officer for 10 more years, and then getting into the pilot seat. That is not the case anymore. You look across the world, pilots captains are in their 20s, right? So we need to make sure that they have at their disposal things which make air travel and continue to remain the safest mode of transportation. And the third thing is scalability, and this is critical to Seattle and this region. How do we make sure that we take a prototype and are able to have the manufacturing system so that we are able to make aircrafts at scale every week, every month? Right now, we do about 35, 36 aircrafts in Renton, about 10 in Everett per month. We want to be able to do that at multiples, right? And I think all those three factors are critical to where we are in this town and in the state. So that's about technology. In terms of restaurants, well, I have two that I like. There is one called Nirmal, which is in Occidental Avenue close to the stadiums, which is pretty good. They have a different tone of Indian cuisine, which a lot of people love, including me. And then there is a restaurant up in Kirkland, and it's called Kathakali, which is South Indian, and again, kind of cuisine that I like.
Excellent, excellent. I want to say thank you to this wonderful panel, and please join me in thanking them. I felt like we could have talked for another hour and a half, and so a whirlwind. And so thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Tom.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you, Brian, Raj, Avik, and Anand, and Samir. So 2 ways this panel was diverse, I should say. One is that 2 people, while they're from Fortune 50 companies, we have also a mid-sized Seattle-based business represented. And the other way is to emphasize the bilateral nature of the relationship between the 2 countries, right? So Infosys is an Indian-based company founded by 7 people with $250, as Anand told us, right? And so we're showing how it's bilateral, the relationship. And a side note, Narayan Murthy, who was one of those 7 people, was sent his recorded remarks because he was unable to attend, and you can find his recorded remarks on our website about the conference and about these relationships. So we have 10 minutes just to take a break, get some coffee, and then we will have a majority female panel next.